Women aren't as hard to understand as you think. If you know how to see clearly into these 12 things most men go their entire lives never realizing. This isn't about pickup lines or dating tricks. These are deep emotional truths that open a woman's heart, and only a grounded man can actually hold that space. If you've ever been left and had no idea why, maybe it's because no one ever taught you this 12 silent emotional truths that women always feel, even if they never say them out loud. 1. The power of a man who knows when to walk away. You've probably heard the saying, a truly strong man isn't the one who always stays. It's the one who knows when it's time to walk away. And I want to ask you, have you ever been in a relationship where deep down you knew something wasn't right anymore, but you stayed anyway, out of fear of loss, out of habit, out of hope? I've met so many men like that, especially after 40. When you've invested your heart, your time, sometimes your entire life into someone, walking away at that point isn't just hard, it's painful. But here's what Stoic philosophy teaches us, and it's not just theory. It's something I've seen in real life over and over again. If something no longer serves your virtue, it no longer deserves your presence. I once worked with a man named Richard, 58 years old, married nearly 30 years. According to him, his wife no longer respected him. Every conversation turned into a fight. Every time he showed vulnerability, he was mocked or ignored. And yet, he stayed, out of loneliness, out of guilt, out of the belief that a good man never leaves. But here's the truth. He didn't stay because of love. He stayed because of fear. And fear has never been the foundation of real loyalty. In modern psychology, we call this emotional attachment through avoidance, staying not because something is healthy, but because you've forgotten what you actually deserve. The Stoic man is different. He knows his presence has value, and when respect is gone, he doesn't run, he walks away. And here's the beautiful part. When Richard finally left that relationship, he didn't fall apart. He got quieter, calmer, more peaceful. For the first time in years, he sat with a cup of tea and said, "I don't feel like I need to beg to be loved anymore." So I want you to remember this, as sometimes the greatest courage a man can show isn't in how long he can endure, but in knowing when to let go. And that, my friend, is one of the highest expressions of inner strength. It's what living stoically really means. Not clinging, but keeping only what's truly worthy of staying. So let me ask you gently, are you holding on to something that no longer belongs to you? I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm simply inviting you to listen quietly to yourself. The answer has probably been with you all along. 2. The kind of mystery that comes from depth, not disappearing. I want you to picture this. You meet a woman for the first time. She asks you about your life, and instead of pouring it all out, you just smile gently. Answer just enough, not evasive, but not oversharing either. Not because you're playing a game, but because you understand anything truly valuable takes time to unfold. See, for a Stoic man, mystery isn't a tactic. It's not about disappearing and then reappearing. It's not ghosting or pulling emotional strings. It's not about being hard to read. It's about holding back the most sacred parts of yourself and offering them only to someone patient enough to listen and genuine enough to care. Women, especially mature, self-aware women, they see through the games. They're no longer impressed by a man who's sweet one moment and gone the next. They're not interested in chasing someone who keeps vanishing to seem interesting. What moves them is when they sense something deeper in the man in front of them, something that can't be rushed, something that invites discovery. I remember a group therapy session I led for men over 40. One man, Sam, shared something that stuck with me. He said, "I used to think I had to tell my whole life story, to connect all the heartbreaks, all the wounds. But what I didn't realize is, when I overshared too soon, I watered down the very essence of who I am." And I nodded, because that realization, that's exactly what Stoic philosophy teaches. You don't need to be understood right away. You just need to be strong enough not to turn yourself into a resume. A man with depth chooses carefully what he shares and what he holds sacred. Not because he's hiding, but because he respects himself. He knows that things like trust, pain, dreams aren't meant to be laid out casually for anyone to pick apart. You might not say much, but your quiet can stir curiosity, not because you're withholding, but because you're inviting someone to go deeper slowly, step by step. And you know what women feel that. They don't need you to explain everything. They just need to know that beneath your calm, there's a real world inside you. That's the kind of mystery that matters. Not strategy, but substance. And the man who has real depth never has to fight for attention, because his stillness speaks the loudest. 3. The power of steady eye contact. I once heard a woman say something that stayed with me. I knew I could trust him when he looked me in the eyes and didn't flinch. And I've never forgotten that. See, the eyes don't lie. They're the most honest mirror of what's going on inside a person. And women, especially emotionally intuitive women, they pick up on things you don't say. They feel you through your eyes, through your pauses, through the tiny shifts in how you show up when you're face to face. A Stoic man doesn't perform eye contact. He doesn't stare to dominate or avoid to protect himself. He's simply there, present, calm, grounded, not anxious, not seeking approval. And that's exactly what makes people, especially women, feel safe. I remember talking to a retired veteran over 70 years old. He had lived through war loss and a lot of life, but his gaze was still like quiet steel. Not cold, just deep. Not judging, just seeing. And when he looked at someone, the room got quiet. I asked him, "How do you stay so steady?" He smiled and said, "When you've seen enough, you don't need to say much." That stuck with me, because in a woman's eyes, when she looks into a man's gaze, she's not looking for seduction. She's looking for stability. She's silently asking, "Can I be fully myself with you?" And she'll answer that question just by the way you look at her. So if you find yourself uncomfortable holding eye contact, especially with someone you care about, don't focus on looking right. Focus on becoming solid enough inside so you have nothing to run from. Because eye contact isn't just a way to communicate. It's the most silent message you'll ever send about who you are. And if you can hold that gaze calmly, fully, you don't need to say much at all. She'll feel it. She'll know. And sometimes that's all it takes. 4. The silent power of presence. I want you to think back to a moment in your life when someone sat beside you without saying a word. No advice, no pep talk, no fixing, just there. Quiet, still, present. Do you remember what that felt like? Maybe it was after a loss, or a panic attack, or just one of those days when life feels too heavy. And that person, they didn't say it'll be okay. They didn't try to cheer you up. They just sat close enough so you knew you weren't alone. that my friend is the power of presence, and for women, it's worth more than 1,000 promises. I once worked with a woman in her early 50s, twice divorced, weathered by a life of tough decisions and emotional burdens. When I asked her what made her feel the most loved in all those years, she didn't mention flowers, vacations, or romantic gestures. She spoke of a man, not a lover, but a friend, who sat with her one afternoon when she couldn't find the strength to speak. He didn't try to fix anything. He didn't tell her how to feel. He just sipped his coffee and stayed. She said, "It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I had to be strong." See, as men, we're wired to act, to solve, to do, to fix. And when the woman we care about is sad or overwhelmed, we rush in with solutions. "Don't worry, I've got this." But the truth is, that's not always what she needs. Sometimes what she really needs is to rest in your presence, to be held in a moment where she doesn't need to explain herself, or smile, or be okay just yet. And that kind of presence, calm, steady, grounded. It doesn't come from physical strength. It comes from a mind and heart trained in stillness. That's the kind of strength a Stoic man understands. Not every act of love requires words. Sometimes doing nothing is the most powerful act of all. So the next time the woman you love is going through a storm, don't rush in to fix her. Just sit, steady, quiet, say nothing, and let her feel the most valuable thing you can offer, emotional safety, through your presence alone. Chapter 5. Listening deeply, not to respond, but to truly feel. I once asked an older woman a simple question. How do you know when a man truly cares about you? She didn't hesitate. She said, "When I speak, and he doesn't interrupt. He doesn't try to fix me. He doesn't change the subject. He just listens, like I'm the only thing that exists in that moment." That answer has stayed with me ever since. Because in this noisy world, real listening, deep, present, undivided attention has become rare. Most of us think we're listening, but really, we're just waiting for our turn to speak. And for a lot of men, especially. Those of us who've spent decades solving problems, managing people, pushing through life, we're wired to jump into action. The moment we hear that someone's upset or hurting, our brain kicks in. Don't feel that way. Let me tell you what you should do. Come on, it's not that bad. I get it. Those words usually come from a good place. But for many women, especially those who've spent a lifetime having to explain themselves, that kind of response doesn't feel like love. It feels like you're not really with them. The Stoic man, he doesn't rush in to rescue emotions. He's not afraid of discomfort. He doesn't get swept into the storm. He stays grounded, still. He listens not to fix, but to feel. Because he understands something that both philosophy and modern psychology agree on. Women don't need you to be right. They need you to be real. You don't need to be a therapist. You don't need the perfect words. You just need a heart quiet enough not to react, eyes that don't judge, and presence deep enough to say without words, "I hear you, and I'm fully here." So the next time she's talking, even if she's repeating herself, even if you don't quite understand why she feels the way she does, I invite you to try one thing. Don't rush in. Just stay. Listen, and let your silence carry your empathy, because sometimes the only thing she really needs is to feel seen, not fixed, and that for a Stoic man is the quiet strength of a soul that has matured. 6. The right kind of silence is an emotional superpower. I want you to picture this. You're in the middle of a tense conversation. She raises her voice. Emotions are running high. Her words aren't coming from logic anymore, but from pain, from things she's held in too long. And you, the man in the room, are standing at a familiar crossroads. Do you react, or do you stay silent? Most of us, especially those of us who've lived long enough to know we have nothing left to prove, have been in that exact moment. The moment you want to fire back, to argue, to explain, to win. But then, you stop. You choose silence. Not because you're weak, not because you're afraid, but because you know not everything is worth trading your peace for. This isn't avoidance. This is the silence that comes from awareness. The kind of silence that only a stoic man understands. He knows emotions are waves, but he is the rock. He doesn't need to raise his voice to stand firm. He just refuses to be swept away. I once worked with a man named David, mid-50s. Successful entrepreneur, had been through 2 marriages. He told me that in his first marriage, he always fought to be heard to be right. But by the second time around, after learning about Stoicism, he shifted. He said, "I realized I don't need to win the argument. I just need to not lose myself." That hit deep, because real strength, especially in love, isn't about winning with logic. It's about staying anchored when logic has left the room. Seneca once said, "Silence is golden when used at the right time." That kind of silence isn't retreat. It's the most powerful statement of self-possession. I don't need to speak to prove who I am. I just need to remain still and let my peace speak for me. And you know what? Often what earns a woman's respect isn't the moment you won the debate. It's the moment you chose not to react. When you can hold your center while everything around you spins out of control. She'll see it. She'll feel it. And in a world that can't stop talking, the man who knows when to speak and when to stay silent is the one who makes her feel this. With you, I don't have to stay on guard. 7. Words that touch the heart without needing to sound perfect. Once sat in a group counseling session for men over 40, and there was a moment that brought the whole room to stillness. A man named Mark, 62 years old, a retired firefighter. Rugged, quiet, grounded. He shared something he said to his new wife after years of being widowed. "I can't promise I'll always make you happy, but I promise I won't disappear when you're hurting." No poetry, no performance. Just the truth, spoken by a man who had known loss and understood what it really meant to stay. I looked over and saw his wife, tears falling silently, not because the words were fancy, but because they were real. You see, women aren't moved by rehearsed lines from a book. They don't need you to be a poet. They need you to be yourself, to speak from a place of stillness, not from the pressure to say the right thing. And Stoic men, they get this. They don't speak to impress. They don't over-explain to gain approval. They speak only when there's something true that needs to be said, and they speak it with presence. Because here's what happens. When your words come from that quiet place inside, from the part of you that no longer needs to be validated, those words don't just go in one ear and out the other. They land. They stick. They leave an imprint. Neuroscience even backs this up. Women retain emotionally sincere language more strongly than generic words, especially when spoken in a space that feels emotionally safe. It's not about having a loud voice. It's not about fancy vocabulary. It's about sincerity, something you can't fake. So next time you catch yourself thinking, "What should I say to make her feel loved?" Here's my advice. Don't search for the perfect sentence. Just speak the truth. Let your stillness carry each word. Because when you speak without trying to prove anything, your words become a form of emotional presence. And the woman beside you, she won't just hear you, she'll feel you. 8. Purpose is more powerful than fleeting passion. I want you to picture two men. The first one burns with passion. He speaks loudly, dreams big, always chasing a new project, a new vision, a revolution just around the corner. But if you check in a year later, you might not see much left. Just the smoke trails of whatever burned brightest last. Now the second man, he's quieter. No headlines, no noise. But every day, he shows up. Not because someone's watching, not because he needs praise, but because he knows where he's going and why it matters. That second man you see is living with purpose, and to a mature woman, that's far more attractive than any momentary blaze. Passion is easy to ignite and just as easy to burn out. But purpose, that's what keeps you grounded even on days when no one's cheering you on. Women don't just listen to what you say about your future. They feel whether you can stay the course even when the spotlight fades. I remember working with a retired engineer named Thomas in his 50s. He told me that in over 30 years of marriage, his wife never once had to wonder, is he going to change direction again today? No, he wasn't flashy, but every single day he moved forward. And that, he said, created what he called quiet trust. A Stoic man doesn't live to impress. He doesn't chase the highs. He chooses a direction and lives it every day. Not because it looks good, but because it gives his life meaning. And here's the thing. When you stop trying to prove yourself with fire, with noise, with constant excitement, a woman senses something far deeper. He'll still be him, whether I'm watching or not. That's where lasting attraction begins. Not from heat, but from clarity. Not from what you chase today, but from why you never gave up. And in a world full of chaos and change, a man like that, he's rare and deeply trustworthy. 9. Leading through steadiness, not control. Let me share an image with you, one I'll never forget. It was a quiet morning at a small train station in Virginia. Light rain falling. An elderly couple, probably in their early 70s, stood side by side waiting for their train. The woman was clearly on edge. The train was delayed, and she was getting flustered. Her voice a little sharp, her hands fidgeting, her body tense. Everything about her said, "I'm not okay right now." And the man, he didn't argue. He didn't say, "Come on, it's not a big deal." He didn't rush to fix her mood or silence her stress. He just stepped forward quietly, took the heavy bag off her shoulder, placed it gently beside her, and then looked at her with presence. A simple nod, steady, grounded. And just like that, she let out a long exhale. Her shoulders softened, her voice calmed. Not because he said anything profound, but because he stood there, like a pillar in the middle of the storm. You see, leadership in a relationship isn't about commanding others. It's about creating a space that doesn't get swept up in emotional chaos. Women aren't looking for someone to control them. They're looking for someone strong enough not to be shaken when they need to lean on you. The Stoic man doesn't lead with a raised voice. He leads through inner stability. He anchors the moment not by force, but by calm. And let me tell you, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, what your partner remembers most isn't just how you show up on the good days. She remembers how you responded when things got hard. Did you lose your temper or hold your ground? Did you try to control her emotions or simply stand with her in them? Did you raise your voice or soften the storm? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The strong man is the one who remains himself in the face of what he cannot control." And that applies just as much to love as it does to war. So no, you don't need to be the kind of leader who dominates or dictates. You just need to be the kind of man she can count on, even when she's not okay. Not to manage her emotions, but to gently remind her, "I'm here, and I'm not lost." Because leadership isn't control. Leadership is keeping love steady when life gets stormy. And sometimes, that quiet steadiness, that's what makes a woman feel most deeply loved. 10. Heal yourself. Don't take it out on her. I once heard a woman say during a group therapy session, "I don't mind that he gets sad or angry. What wears me down is being his emotional punching bag every time he's upset." And honestly, that's more common than most men realize. Even kind, intelligent, sincere men sometimes don't see it. That they're offloading pain, stress, and frustration onto the very person they love. Not to hurt her, but because they haven't yet learned how to heal from within. But the Stoic man, he's different. He doesn't deny his emotions. He gets angry, anxious, tired, just like anyone. But he doesn't react blindly. He observes. He lets the emotion rise and pass like a cloud moving across the sky. He doesn't avoid it, but he doesn't let it drive him either. I remember talking with a close friend, Alan, in his 50s. He'd just come through a really painful divorce. One night I asked him, "Why didn't you ever open up to her during those last months you were clearly hurting?" And he said very quietly, "Because she wasn't responsible for processing the things I hadn't yet faced myself. I learned that if I don't handle my wounds, I'll end up placing them on someone else's shoulders, even without meaning to." You see, women don't need you to be perfect, but what exhausts them is becoming the outlet for anger, disappointment, or fear you haven't taken the time to understand. What they long for is the assurance that when you're struggling, you'll step back and face yourself instead of projecting it all onto them. And no, you don't have to be a monk to do that. You just have to remember, your emotions are your responsibility. No one, not even someone who loves you deeply, should become the crash site for everything inside you that's still unhealed. Seneca once said, "Anger is a brief madness, and every time you give into it, you lose a piece of yourself." The Stoic man learns to heal in stillness. He journals. He walks in silence. He takes a deep breath before he speaks. Not to suppress his feelings, but to become a safe place for himself first, and then for those he loves. And when a woman senses that in you, when she knows you won't tear her down on the days you're worn out, she'll open up. She'll trust you. She'll let you see the most vulnerable parts of her, because she knows, with you, she doesn't have to stay on guard. And sometimes that safety, that quiet emotional safety, is the most powerful healing there is, for both of you. 11. Consistency builds trust. I once asked a woman in her 50s, recently divorced, cautiously stepping into a new relationship, "What's the thing that makes you most hesitant to love again?" She didn't even pause. She said, "I'm afraid people change." And I got it. Not the kind of change that comes from growth, but the kind that feels unstable. One day, he's gentle and affectionate. The next day, cold, distant, like you never mattered at all. That kind of inconsistency doesn't hurt because it's dramatic. It hurts because it's constant. It's like trying to stand on ground that keeps shifting beneath your feet. Women can't relax into love if they don't know which version of you they're going to get tomorrow. But a Stoic man, he moves differently. He doesn't make big promises. He doesn't run on emotion. and he doesn't let his mood decide how he treats others. He chooses consistency not to look good, but because he understands how sacred trust really is. I once told a student of mine, if you want a woman to feel safe with you, don't just show her how good you can be, show her how steady you can stay. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves crash against and then fall back." That steadiness, even when it's not flashy, not poetic, is what a woman leans on. Because in the end, what opens someone's heart, what makes them love deeply, isn't your best line or your grandest gesture. It's the quiet, repeated rhythm of showing up again and again with the same calm presence. That's the kind of love that feels safe, and that's the mark of a truly grown man. 12. Don't try to decode her, just be there. I remember one quiet afternoon in my therapy office. A man in his 50s, tough-looking former military officer, sat across from me, genuinely confused. He said, "I don't get it. She changes all the time. Yesterday she was happy. Today she's crying." I try to ask. I try to fix it. I try to understand. But the more I do, the more she shuts down. What am I supposed to do? I looked at him and simply said, "Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing at all." You see, women like all of us have days when even they don't fully understand their emotions. Feelings aren't a puzzle to solve. They're a flow, a current meant to be listened to, not decoded. A Stoic man doesn't need to understand everything to be fully present. He knows he's not there to fix someone's emotions. He's there to hold a safe space so that the woman beside him can be fully herself, even when it's messy, unclear, or hard to explain. I once witnessed a moment so simple and yet so deeply moving. A woman sat on a park bench, resting her head on her husband's shoulder. She was crying, not over anything specific, just overwhelmed by the weight of the day. Her husband, already in his older years, simply placed his hand gently on her back. He didn't ask. He didn't try to cheer her up. He didn't rush her healing. He was just there. And you could see it. In that quiet moment, she felt safe. And she softened. You don't need to figure her out. You just need to be a steady presence, a calm heart. Not panicking, not labeling her as too emotional, not bombarding her with questions. Just grounded like a tree that doesn't shake when the wind blows. Because when a woman feels, "I don't have to explain everything to be loved," that's when she begins to trust, to relax, to be real. And you know what's beautiful? The moment you stop trying to decode her, she starts opening up to you in the most natural, unforced way. That's the gift of patient presence, a gift beyond words, and one every woman remembers. If anything I've shared today speaks to you, leave me a comment below. I want to hear your story, your thoughts, your journey. And if you know a man who needs to hear this, send this video his way. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep walking together through deeper lessons like this. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to grow one steady step at a time.